The distant mountains of Montana held many secrets, but none as extraordinary as what John Carter discovered that autumn morning. A cool breeze rustled through the pine trees as John adjusted his backpack and continued his solo hike through the wilderness. At 42, the former military medic had traded battlefields for backcountry, finding peace in his work with the local search and rescue team. John paused when he noticed a strange gash cutting through the forest ahead. Trees lay splintered and broken, creating an unnatural path of destruction that his experienced eyes couldn't attribute to any storm or landslide. Curiosity pulled him forward. "What the hell?" he muttered, coming to a stop at the edge of a small crater. In its center rested what could only be described as a spacecraft, about the size of a small bus, its silver-blue hull dented and scorched. His first instinct was to retreat, call authorities. But a faint sound reached his ears, something like a whimper. The medic in him responded automatically, overriding caution. The vessel's entry point had been torn open in the crash. John squeezed through, flashlight in hand. The interior was dim, with strange symbols glowing on damaged panels. The air smelled of ozone, and something else, coppery, but not quite like human blood. "Hello," he called out softly. "Anyone hurt?" A shuffle came from the rear compartment. John moved carefully through the debris, sweeping his light across what appeared to be living quarters. There, huddled in a corner, were three small figures surrounding a larger one. All had smooth lilac skin, large eyes, and no visible hair. The smaller ones, children, he assumed, looked up with expressions of fear that transcended species. The adult figure lay still, breathing in shallow gasps. A dark purple fluid leaked from a gash across her torso. The children made chirping sounds as John approached, one bravely positioning itself between him and the injured adult. Despite its fear, the small alien's protective stance was unmistakable. "It's okay," John said gently, setting down his backpack. "I'm a medic. I can help." He opened his first aid kit, movements deliberate and slow. The alien children watched, their large eyes blinking rapidly. John assessed the injured adult, whose breathing grew more labored by the minute. The wound was deep, exposing what he assumed was the equivalent of vital organs. John cleaned the wound as best he could, applied pressure bandages from his kit, and improvised a sealing dressing using the waterproof cover from his map. The alien's blood, if that's what it was, seemed to clot differently than human blood, but the principles of trauma care held true. One of the children, slightly taller than the others, offered him a small container with a gel-like substance. John hesitated, then understood. He nodded thanks and applied the gel to the edges of the wound. It seemed to stabilize the bleeding immediately. Hours passed as John worked. The alien's condition stabilized, though she remained unconscious. The children gradually moved closer, watching him with increasing curiosity rather than fear. The smallest one eventually touched John's hand, its three-fingered grasp gentle and warm. Night fell. John built a small fire just outside the craft and showed the children how to keep the injured adult warm. He shared his food rations, which they examined carefully before tasting. Their relief at finding the food compatible was evident in their chirping sounds that almost resembled laughter. Under the stars, as the alien children huddled close to him for warmth and security, John Carter realized his life had changed irrevocably. He was no longer just a man who saved lost hikers and climbers. He had become something far more significant. The first human contact for a family of refugees from the stars, their only hope for survival on a planet that didn't know they existed. 3 days passed with John making camp beside the crashed vessel. He called his supervisor claiming a family emergency, buying time to help the aliens without raising suspicion. Each morning, he hiked down the mountain to his truck for additional supplies, then returned to continue caring for the injured alien mother. On the 4th morning, John entered the ship to find the mother's eyes open, deep violet orbs studying him intently. The children chirped excitedly, gathering around her. "You're awake," John said, kneeling beside her. "That's good. My name is John." He tapped his chest. "John." The alien mother raised a slender hand to her own chest. "Vexera," she said, her voice melodic and soft. She then gestured to each child in turn. "Tyla," she indicated the tallest. "Nex," the middle one with a slight green tint to its skin. "Kivo," the smallest, who had barely left John's side since the first night. "Nice to meet you all properly," John smiled, unpacking fresh bandages. As he changed Vexera's dressing, something strange happened. A gentle pressure built in his mind, like the beginnings of a headache but not painful. Then words formed, not heard, but understood. "You saved me. Save my children." John froze, looking into Vexera's eyes. "Are you in my head? Limited contact. Energy low. But needed to thank you." "You're welcome," John replied, amazed. "What happened to your ship?" Over the next hour, through brief mental exchanges that clearly tired Vexera, John learned their story. The Lyrians were peaceful explorers who had fled their home system after an aggressive species began conquering their colonies. This small family unit had been separated from their evacuation fleet during an attack and damaged their navigation system trying to escape. "Can your people find you?" John asked, helping Vexera sit up to drink water. "Beacon damage. Ship beyond repair." John looked around at the wrecked interior. "I might be able to help fix some things. I was a combat engineer before becoming a medic." Vexera's gratitude flowed into his mind, along with a warning. "Your world's leaders. How would they react to us?" The question gave John pause. He thought about government protocols for unknown threats, about research facilities and military responses. "Not well," he admitted. "We should keep your presence quiet until we can contact your people." While Vexera rested, John began working with Tyla, the oldest child, to understand the ship's systems. Despite the language barrier, they developed a system of gestures and drawings. Tyla was quick-witted, catching on to John's ideas rapidly. By nightfall, they had identified the ship's power core, still functional but running at minimal capacity. The following day brought a breakthrough when Kivo, the youngest, approached John with a small device resembling a tablet. The child activated it, and suddenly simple images appeared. A communication tool. Through pictures and the occasional mental nudge from Vexera, they established basic communication. John learned that Lyrians lived in family groups, valued knowledge exchange, and possessed technology centuries beyond Earth's. However, they strictly avoided interfering with developing worlds like Earth. Their crash landing had violated their own prime directive. As darkness fell on the fifth night, John sat outside the ship with the children, teaching them Earth constellations while they showed him their home stars. Kivo climbed onto John's lap, pointing upward with excitement. "Home," the small alien said, the first spoken English word any of them had attempted. "Yes," John replied, feeling a surprising tightness in his chest. "And I promise I'll help you get back there." Inside the ship, Vexera watched through the damaged doorway, her thoughts both grateful and concerned. This human had saved them, but integrating with Earth's civilization presented dangers to both species. As John laughed with her children under strange stars, she made her decision. They would trust him completely. They had no other choice. 2 weeks into caring for the alien family, John had established a routine. Early mornings, he drove to town for supplies, careful to vary his shopping locations to avoid suspicion. Afternoons were spent teaching the children English while Vexera continued healing. Evenings were dedicated to repair attempts on the ship's communication system. Today, John arrived with a special surprise tucked in his backpack. "I brought something for you guys," he said, entering the ship. The 3 alien children immediately abandoned their tasks and rushed to greet him, their earlier fear now completely replaced by excitement. Kivo wrapped thin arms around John's leg while Tyla and Nex chirped questions in a mixture of their language and broken English. "What bring? What bring?" Nex asked, bouncing on his toes. John pulled out a children's picture book. "This is how our young ones learn about Earth animals." The three gathered around as he opened to the first page. Their large eyes widened at colorful images of elephants and giraffes. "These real?" Tilla asked skeptically. "Very real," John laughed. "Maybe someday I can show you." From the sleeping area, Vexera emerged, moving slowly but steadily. Her recovery had progressed well, though the deep wound across her torso would leave permanent scarring. "They have never known joy like this since before our flight began." Her thoughts touched John's mind. Their mental connection had strengthened with time, no longer causing her fatigue. "Kids are adaptable," John replied, watching as Kivo attempted to mimic an elephant's trunk by holding his arm to his face. While the children explored the book, John and Vexera moved to the ship's control room. The damage was worse than they'd initially hoped. Despite 2 weeks of work, they'd only managed to restore auxiliary power. "The main communication array is beyond repair," John said, pointing to the melted components. "But I think we can modify your emergency beacon to reach farther." Vexera's slender fingers moved across the alien controls. "It would require connecting to Earth technology to amplify the signal." "Risky." "I know people who won't ask questions," John offered. "An old Army buddy works at the radio telescope facility 2 counties over." Their planning was interrupted by a distant sound that made John freeze. An ATV engine, coming closer. "Someone's coming," he hissed. "Get the kids to the hiding spot." Within minutes, the alien family was secured in a concealed compartment. John had helped them prepare. He grabbed his hiking gear and stepped outside, casually checking his map as 2 local hunters crested the ridge. "Afternoon," John called out with practiced ease. "You guys having any luck?" The hunters, suspicious at first, relaxed at John's friendly demeanor. After brief conversation about trail conditions, they continued on their way. But the close call underscored the danger of their current location. That evening, after the children were asleep, John spread a map before Vexera. "We need to move you somewhere safer," he explained. "I know an abandoned mining cabin here." He pointed to a remote location. "It has solar panels I installed for a research project years ago. We could power your beacon from there." "The children have grown attached to this place." "And to you," Vexera observed. "I'm not going anywhere," John promised. "But we need better protection for your family." 3 days later, under cover of darkness, John transported the alien family to the cabin in his truck, hidden under camping gear. The children were frightened at first, but turned the move into an adventure when John framed it as his secret mission. As they settled into the cabin, Tyla helped set up their sleeping area while Nex and Kivo explored every corner with boundless curiosity. Later, sitting on the cabin porch, Vexera watched her children playing under Earth's moon with their human protector. "On our world," she told John, "when someone saves a family at risk to themselves, they become family." John smiled, watching Kivo attempt to teach him a Lyrian counting game. "I think I'd like that," he said softly, realizing he'd found something in this alien family that had been missing in his solitary life, a sense of belonging. A month into their stay at the mining cabin, John and the Lyrians had established a comfortable routine. The children were now speaking basic English, while John had mastered several dozen Lyrian phrases. Each day brought new progress on their modified beacon project, combining Earth technology with alien components. John's frequent absences from town, however, had not gone unnoticed. Frank Miller, who had served in the same military unit as John years ago, watched through binoculars from the ridgeline as John's truck wound up the mountain road. For the 3rd time that week, John's vehicle was loaded with supplies that seemed excessive for one man. "Where are you going with all that equipment, old friend?" Frank muttered to himself, jotting down notes. As head of local security for a government research facility 20 miles south, Frank had been tasked with investigating unusual activity in the area after satellite imagery detected an energy signature 3 weeks earlier. At the cabin, John unloaded boxes of electronics while Nex and Kivo raced around helping in their enthusiastic but chaotic way. "Careful with that one," John cautioned as Kivo attempted to lift a box twice his size. "It's got delicate parts inside." Inside, Tyla and Vexera were connecting wires to a partially disassembled ham radio John had modified. "Connection complete," Tyla announced proudly, her English improving daily. Vexera smiled. "The signal amplifier is responding to our power source. We may be ready for a test tonight." John felt a wave of both relief and sadness. Success meant the Lyrians might soon be rescued, something he wanted for them, even as he'd grown to care deeply for the small family. That evening, as they prepared for their first transmission attempt, a sound outside made John freeze. He motioned for silence and peered through the window. Headlights were approaching through the trees, multiple vehicles moving with purpose. "They found us," John whispered, heart racing. "We need to go. Now." Years of emergency training kicked in. Within minutes, John had the family gathering only essential items while he rapidly disconnected their beacon equipment. "Remember our emergency plan," he told the frightened children, "like we practiced." Before the vehicles reached the clearing, John led the aliens through a hidden trapdoor beneath the cabin floor. The narrow mining tunnel beyond was their escape route, pre-stocked with supplies. "How did they find us?" Tyla asked, her voice trembling as they hurried through the darkness. "Someone must have followed me," John replied grimly. "I got careless." Behind them, they heard vehicles stopping, doors slamming, and voices calling out. Then came the sound of the cabin door being forced open. The escape tunnel emerged a half-mile away, hidden behind a rock formation. John peered out cautiously before leading the family into the night forest. They could see flashlight beams sweeping the area around the cabin. "We need to reach higher ground," John whispered. "Vexera, can you make it up that ridge?" The alien mother nodded, though pain flickered across her features. Her wound, while healed externally, still troubled her during physical exertion. As they climbed, Kivo whimpered softly until Nex put a reassuring arm around his younger sibling. John felt a surge of pride at their bravery. Near dawn, they reached a small cave John knew from previous hiking trips. Once inside, he activated a small portable device Vexera had modified from Lyrian technology. "This should mask your life signs from their scanners," he explained. "But we can't stay long." Tyla approached, holding the key component of their beacon. "We saved most important part," he said. "Can still call home." John spread out a map. "Your people were coming to these coordinates, right?" He pointed to a location 50 miles north. "We'll need to get there, but they're going to be looking for us." Vexera moved closer, her mental voice concerned. "Who are these humans?" John. "Government agents, scientists, military. People who would see you as research subjects, not people." Outside, distant shouts indicated search parties spreading out from the cabin. Kivo climbed into John's lap, seeking comfort. "Scared," the small alien admitted. John hugged him gently. "Me too, buddy. But we're going to make it. I promise." As helicopter sounds echoed in the distance, John knew that promise would be tested in the coming days. The race to the extraction point had begun, with the future of his adopted alien family hanging in the balance. 3 days of tense wilderness travel had left them all exhausted. John led the alien family through dense forest, careful to avoid trails and open areas where helicopters might spot them. They moved primarily at night, using the stars for navigation as Vexera had taught John. "How much farther?" Nex asked, helping Kivo over a fallen log. 10 miles, John replied, checking his compass. "We should reach the extraction point by tomorrow night." Their progress was slower than hoped. Vexera's strength was fading, her old injury troubling her after days of difficult travel. John shared his dwindling supply of pain medication with her, knowing it offered only partial relief to her alien physiology. That evening, as they rested in a small cave, Tyla finished the final adjustments to their beacon. "It will work now," she said confidently. "When we reach proper location, signal will be strong enough." John smiled at her determination. Over the weeks, Tilla had revealed an impressive technical mind, adapting quickly to Earth technology and integrating it with Lyrian components. A sudden noise outside made them all freeze. John motioned for silence and crept to the cave entrance. Through the trees, he spotted the unmistakable beam of tactical flashlights. The search parties had caught up. "They're too close," he whispered, returning to the group. "We need a diversion." Vexera immediately understood his meaning. "No, John. Too dangerous, You have to reach that extraction point," John insisted. "Your children need to get home." You are part of our family now. Her thoughts pushed firmly into his mind. "That's why I have to do this," John replied, gathering his backpack. "Family protects family." He knelt before the children, who watched with growing alarm. "I'm going to lead them away. You follow the route we planned. Stay with your mother." Kivo clutched John's jacket. "Come with us." "I'll try to meet you there," John lied, knowing his odds were slim. "But if I don't make it, know that your people are coming for you." John hugged each child briefly, then turned to Vexera. Their mental connection flowed with unspoken emotion. "The debt we owe cannot be repaid, she thought. "It's not about debt," John replied softly. "It's about love." Before anyone could object further, he slipped out of the cave and moved purposefully toward the search team, making just enough noise to attract attention without seeming deliberate. "I got movement," a voice called out. Flashlight beams swung in his direction. John broke into a run, heading away from the cave, away from the extraction point. The sounds of pursuit followed immediately, boots crashing through underbrush, radios crackling with excitement. He led them on a chase for nearly an hour before a misstep sent him tumbling down a ravine. Pain shot through his ankle as he landed. Moments later, lights surrounded him. "John Carter," a familiar voice said, "you've led us on quite a chase." John looked up to see Frank Miller standing over him, accompanied by men in tactical gear. "Frank," John acknowledged, "didn't think you'd sell me out." "National security trumps old friendships," Frank replied. "Where are they, John?" "Who?" A rough hand yanked him to his feet. "The aliens. We tracked their energy signature to your cabin." "Don't know what you're talking about," John gasped through pain. "I'm just camping, with advanced electronic equipment." Frank scoffed. "Take him in. He'll talk eventually." As they dragged him away, John glanced back toward the distant mountains, where the Lyrian family continued their journey without him. He had bought them valuable time and misdirected the search teams. It would have to be enough. At the government facility, John sat handcuffed to a metal table, refusing to answer questions hour after hour. They showed him satellite images, recordings of unusual energy signatures, even a fuzzy photo of what might have been necks outside the cabin. These beings could represent a threat to national security. An interrogator insisted. Their technology alone could change everything. "They're refugees," John finally said. "Not invaders. Just a mother and her children trying to get home." "Then help us make peaceful contact," Frank urged. John laughed bitterly. "Peaceful, with guns and helicopters. They've seen how humans treat things they don't understand." As night fell, John sat alone in his cell, hoping the Lyrian family had reached the extraction point. His sacrifice would mean nothing if they didn't make it home. Despite his circumstances, a strange peace settled over him. For the first time in years, he had found something worth protecting at any cost. 3 days passed in the stark government facility. John sat in his cell, refusing most food and answering questions with stubborn silence. His military background had prepared him for interrogation techniques, but not for the constant worry about Vexera and her children. "You're only making this harder on yourself," Frank said, sliding a cup of coffee across the metal table during yet another questioning session. John stared at the wall behind his former friend. "They're gone by now. You missed your chance." Frank leaned forward. Satellite thermal imaging shows 4 unidentified signatures moving north yesterday. 2 larger, 2 smaller. Ring any bells? John's heart sank, but he kept his expression neutral. The family hadn't reached the extraction point yet. They were still in danger. Probably deer, he muttered. Later that night, as John lay on his narrow cot, a strange vibration ran through the building. The lights flickered, then failed completely. In the darkness, he heard shouts of confusion from the guards. Emergency lights activated, casting the hall in a dim red glow. John moved to his cell door, listening to the chaos outside. Something was happening beyond typical power failure protocols. Suddenly, the lock on his cell door clicked open. John hesitated, suspecting a trap. Then he heard it, a familiar chirping sound that no human could make. "Tyla," he whispered in disbelief. The small alien appeared in the doorway, her large eyes reflecting the red emergency lights. "Come quick," she urged, her English clear and hurried. "How did you?" "Mother's people came," Tyla explained, tugging his hand. "Big ship up top. Small time to escape." John followed as Tyla led him through suspiciously empty hallways. Guards lay unconscious but unharmed at their posts. Security systems had been disabled. "The others?" John asked as they ran. "Waiting." Nex created distraction in other building. They emerged from a side door into the night air, 100 yards away. Hovering silently above the facility's helicopter pad was a sleek craft 3 times larger than Vexera's crashed ship. Its silver-blue hull pulsed with internal light. 6 Lyrian adults stood in defensive positions around the landing zone, holding devices John didn't recognize. Vexera waited at the ship's open hatch, with Kivo clinging to her side. "John!" Kivo shouted, breaking away to run toward him. John had barely taken 3 steps when a shot rang out. Frank and 2 soldiers had emerged from another building, weapons raised. "Stop right there!" Frank shouted. John pushed Tyla toward the ship. "Run." The Lyrian adults activated their devices, creating a shimmering barrier between the humans and the ship. Frank fired again, this time aiming directly at Kivo, who had frozen in fear halfway between John and the ship. Without thinking, John lunged forward, covering the small alien with his body. Fire erupted in his chest as the bullet found its mark. He fell, pulling Kivo beneath him protectively. "John." The child's terrified cry seemed distant as darkness crept into his vision. Strong arms lifted him. Through blurring sight, John saw one of the adult Lyrians carrying him toward the ship, while another had scooped up Kivo. The barrier held as Frank and his men continued firing. Inside the ship, John was placed on a smooth surface. Vexera's face appeared above him, her eyes wide with concern. "Stay with us," her thoughts pressed into his fading consciousness. "The healers will help you." Lyrian voices spoke rapidly around him. Cool hands placed devices on his chest. The pain began to recede, replaced by numbing cold. "Did Kivo? Is he hurt?" John managed to ask. "Safe," Vexera assured him. "You saved him." Again. The ship vibrated as it rose from the ground. Through a viewing port, John saw the facility growing smaller below. Frank and the soldiers were now surrounded by a containment field of some kind, preventing pursuit. "Leaving Earth," John whispered, his strength failing. Tyla and Nex appeared beside their mother, their faces streaked with what must have been Lyrian tears. "Not without you," Tyla insisted, placing her small hand on his. As consciousness slipped away, John felt the ship accelerate, breaking free of Earth's atmosphere. The last thing he heard was Kivo's voice, speaking Lyrian words that Vexera had once taught him. The traditional family blessing of their people, now being said for him. Light filtered through John's eyelids, waking him slowly. The ceiling above was unfamiliar, a gentle curve of material that seemed to glow from within. For several moments, he lay still, trying to make sense of his surroundings. "He's waking," a voice called out in English. Kivo's face appeared above him, eyes wide with excitement. Memory returned in fragments. The government facility. The rescue. Being shot. John tried to sit up but felt strange, as if his body wasn't quite his own. "Easy," came Tayla's voice as she helped support him, body still adjusting. John looked down at his chest where the bullet had struck. A circular patch of slightly lighter skin covered the area. Not a bandage, but something integrated with his body. "What happened to me?" he asked, his voice raspy from disuse. Vexera entered the room, moving with the grace he remembered, but without any sign of her previous injury. She sat beside him, taking his hand in hers. "You were dying." Her thoughts touched his mind. "Your human physiology rejected our healing methods. We had to adapt you." "Adapt me," John repeated. "Part Lyrian now," Nex explained proudly, poking John's arm. "Like us, but still you." John flexed his fingers, noticing subtle differences in how his muscles responded. "How long was I out?" 27 days, Tayla answered. "We reached Lyria yesterday." "Lyria?" John whispered. "Your homeworld." Vexera helped him to the window. Outside, a landscape of breathtaking beauty spread before him. Soaring crystalline structures surrounded by deep purple vegetation. 3 moons hung in a turquoise sky. "Welcome to our home," Vexera said aloud, her spoken English now perfect. John stared in wonder. "I never thought I'd see another planet." "You're home now too," Kivo declared, hugging John's leg. Later that day, after John had regained enough strength to walk, Vexera explained his situation more fully. The partial biological adaptation had saved his life, but made return to Earth impossible. His body now required elements that only existed on Lyria. "I can't go back?" John asked, though he felt less regret than he expected. "Would you want to?" Vexera's thoughts asked gently. "To be studied. Imprisoned." John shook his head. "There's nothing for me there anyway. No family." "Have family here," Nex insisted, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside John's recovery bed. That evening, Vexera took John to meet the Lyrian Council. The Grand Chamber intimidated him until Kivo slipped his small hand into John's, standing proudly beside him. The council elder addressed him in the Lyrian language, which Vexera translated. "John Carter of Earth, you have demonstrated the highest principles of protection and sacrifice. By Lyrian law, such actions toward children create bonds recognized as family throughout our systems." Vexera turned to John. "They're offering you formal adoption rights. You would legally become part of our family unit, the children's second parent." John looked at the 3 children watching him with hope in their large eyes. Something swelled in his chest, a sense of belonging he'd never truly felt on Earth. "I would be honored," he replied. The ceremony was simple but moving. Each child placed their hands on John's and spoke traditional words of family acceptance. When it was complete, the council presented him with a Lyrian identity marker, a small crystalline device that would allow him to integrate into their society. As they left the council chamber, Tayla explained that John would begin learning their advanced sciences tomorrow. He would serve as a cultural bridge, helping Lyrians understand humanity, while sharing human knowledge that might benefit their people. That night, John stood on the balcony of their home, watching unfamiliar constellations. Kivo joined him, pointing to a faint blue star barely visible in the distance. "Earth there," the child said. "Miss it?" John placed his hand on Kivo's shoulder. "Sometimes we find our real home isn't where we were born, but where we're understood." Kivo nodded seriously. "Family not about same blood." "No," John agreed, watching as Tayla and Nex joined them, followed by Vexera. "It's about love and sacrifice." As they stood together under alien stars, John Carter, former military medic, reluctant hero, and now Lyrian family member, felt the weight of his old life fall away. His journey had begun with a crash in the Montana wilderness, but it had led to something far greater: a second chance, a new world, and the family he had always yearned for, but never found until he looked beyond the stars.